Consternation on the streets of Tehran after marathon meetings. World leaders seal a framework restricting Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the phased lifting of sanctions. But as Iranians celebrate, Israel says the plan threatens its survival. So how will it affect the delicate balance of power in the Middle East? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. After 36 years of mistrust and hostility, Iran and the West look to be developing something of a new relationship. A framework on the future of Iran's nuclear capabilities has been agreed upon, and if implemented, sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy are likely to be eventually scrapped. Some hardliners say the framework favoured the West and was a disaster for Iran. But Iran's foreign minister says it was a win-win situation for both sides. So is this a new era for Iran? And is it on track to be a superpower in the region? US President Barack Obama says a framework on Iran's nuclear program will make the world a safer place. According to the agreement, all of Iran's nuclear facilities will be subject to regular inspections. The number of centrifuges will be reduced by 2/3, and some facilities will be redesigned so that it can no longer produce weapons-grade plutonium. In return, US and EU sanctions will be lifted in phases. But it's not binding, and sanctions can be brought back if Iran doesn't comply with the terms of the deal. This agreement is a first step. The aim is now to come up with a comprehensive nuclear plan by the end of June. President Obama now has to convince a hostile US Congress of the benefits of the plan. White House correspondent Patty Culhane has this report.
U.S. President Barack Obama was supposed to be talking about the economy in Kentucky, but he delayed his trip for hours, wanting to make sure the American people heard his perspective on the nuclear deal first.
And I am convinced that if this framework leads to a final comprehensive deal, it will make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
He believes he can make the deal on his own. Many in Congress disagree. Republican Senator Bob Corker says he is going to bring up a bill to force the president to get their approval in 2 weeks, writing, rather than bypass Congress and head straight to the UN Security Council as planned, the administration first should seek the input of the American people. There is growing bipartisan support for congressional review of the nuclear deal, and I am confident of a strong vote. Right now, it's not at all clear that the president has enough support from members of his own party that they won't be able to override a veto in Congress. So what he's doing is he's making the case to the American public, arguing that if Congress kills this deal, the only other option is war.
If Congress kills this deal, not based on expert analysis and without offering any reasonable alternative, then it's the United States that will be blamed for the failure of diplomacy. International unity will collapse, and the path to conflict will widen.
Those in favor of the deal point out the president has public opinion on his side.
I think a lot of the polling suggests Americans, they support the talks. They're not necessarily confident that a deal is going to be effective.
The president expressed the same cynicism, but argues he needs to give diplomacy a chance. But it's not yet clear if the U.S. Congress will let him. Patty Culhane for Inside Story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reacted angrily to the deal.
The cabinet is united in strongly opposing the proposed deal. This deal would pose a grave danger to the region and to the world, and would threaten the very survival of the State of Israel. The deal would not shut down a single nuclear facility in Iran, would not destroy a single centrifuge in Iran, and will not stop R&D on Iran's advanced centrifuges.
So let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Tehran is Sadek Zibakalam, a professor of political science at Tehran University. From New York is Michael Brooks, producer of Majority Report, a political talk and analysis show. And in Jeddah, Turad Al-Amri, strategic analyst and chairman of the Syed Al-Amri Strategic Center. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. On this edition of Inside Stories, Zadik Zibakalam, let me start off with you. We've seen people celebrating on the streets of Tehran. What is your response to this deal? Is it as good as it sounds for Iran?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes, I think it's even much better than what many Iranians expected. And after weeks and months of anticipating and worrying about what will happen, last night there was jubilation not only in Tehran but in many other Iranian cities. People came out as in a very festive mood, although it was very late, and it means that many Iranians are actually supporting the deal.
You say it was better than many Iranians expected. What was it that you did expect? What is it that you got that you didn't think you would get?
Well, to be honest with you, Jane, many Iranians were fearing that there may not be any deal, especially when the scheduled talk was over and when they started, as it were, the extra time. Iranians were worried, and if you saw any Iranian, they were talking and they were nervously listening to what was happening, and they keep asking each other that, do you have the news? Do you have the news? What's the latest?
Turad al-Alamri, considering that Iran is Saudi Arabia's arch enemy, how is news of this development going down there?
In this particular issue, what happened yesterday was a significant step towards the final deal. However, we are still at about 80-something days till the final deal signed. But I have four quick points here. 1st of July will be a major turning point on the strategic affairs of Middle East and Arabian Gulf sub-region. That's a fact. Second, whether this deal is a positive or a negative, what's the impacts, what the implication and complication, it depends actually on the level of positive, peaceful measures and action, I repeat, and action by Iranian leadership after the signage of the final deal towards its Arab neighbors, in particular Saudi Arabia. That will determine the course of next decade.
So does it allay Saudi Arabian concerns in any way?
It is. Everyone is concerned, not only at Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is the remaining regional great power. And it's the golden gate for Iran to enter the civilized world economically, culturally, and politically. However, if Iran chooses the hard and tough way, it will disintegrate as same as the Soviet Union in the early 90s. Now, it depends on Iran. There is two ways. They assured the West that there will be no nuclear bomb. That's fine. The fatwa, which is President Obama applauds yesterday from Khamenei. That's one. But the problem on the Iranian laid on three titles: unclarity, no transparency, and a discrepancy between the rhetoric and the action.
Okay, so you're saying that you really need to see Iran coming good on this deal. Let's bring in Michael Brooks. I mean, it really went down to the wire there, didn't it? I know that you host a radio show. What's the response been there? Because there really are two camps on this issue, aren't there?
I think this has become a very partisan issue in the United States. This is obviously a key aspect of President Obama's diplomatic push in the Middle East. I think in some respects the president has wanted to pivot out of the region, move more towards Asia. So this is a really key piece for him, and it's been filtered through a partisan lens. And the public reaction kind of tracks with that. Now, that said, I think in America there is a broader appetite for diplomacy. There's a strong aversion to further military conflict in the region. And there's actually some sense that's filtered into public opinion, this recognition that we at least with regards to ISIS and at least with regards to some aspects of Iraqi security, American and Iranian interests right now are pretty synchronized. So I think that there is so kind of cautious optimism. Maybe some of the American attitudes track with Saudi attitudes, in fact, about the results of this deal. But I think generally, also what's striking to me is listening to the reaction from Iran and the reaction from Saudi Arabia. You know, America has many other things on its mind, so this is important. But obviously, there's economic news. We're gearing up for another presidential election, so this is sort of just another sort of item on a very busy, very convoluted agenda in the United States.
And certainly needed by Obama. I want to find out from you, Sadiq, if you think that Iran's nuclear program has been worth it. I mean, something like over $100 billion has been spent on it. Because of this program, the country's faced crippling sanctions. What did Iran get from it?
Yes, let me just clarify 2 points. Point number one is that what you just mentioned, has it been worth it? Well, to be honest with you, there are some critics inside Iran. One of them actually happens to be myself, that we have been more or less criticizing Iranian nuclear program from not from a military point of view, but so much from an economical point of view. That has it been worth it? I mean, the enriched uranium that we are producing at Natanz and Fordo, how much is it costing Iranian economy? Would it not have been cheaper to buy it from outside? There are these issues, and I must tell you that it is actually for the first time since the new government, President Rouhani was elected 19 months ago, that it is for the first time that some Iranians can actually raise the whole issue of your question, whether it was economically worth it what Iran has spent so far. But the second point is that the reason why I am so optimistic that the deal will go ahead is that Iran has maintained all along that I have no intention of producing an atomic weapon. Now, given the fact that Iran has no intention of producing an atomic weapon, then by all means, let United States, let the European community, let Atomic Agency, International Atomic Agency, let all of them inspect, because Iran has nothing to hide.
Okay, Michael, you've been nodding away there. You know, in effect, Iran didn't really achieve anything other than negating or getting back what it had before it started its nuclear program, before it raised regional fears. What does Iran become now? Does it become a superpower? Is it still a nuclear threat? I mean, what is its status? How should it be viewed in the region?
Well, there's a couple of aspects to that, and I think it is important, particularly in the discourse in America, to recognize that there's a lot of ambiguity in the nature of Iran's program. We don't know. Iran certainly has denied very strongly that they're seeking a weapons program. I think that their intentions and their way of going about it, again, have been ambiguous. But I think that the real sort of issue here is that the relationship between Iran and the United States already changed significantly just by having these negotiations take place to begin with. It's striking that watching Secretary Kerry and Secretary Zarif walking and sharing a chat in Switzerland is not really even unusual to see anymore. So in that sense, this relationship has already shifted. Iran is obviously a very important player in the region, and I think they're synchronized with the U.S. on ISIS. Maybe their eyes got bigger than their stomachs with Yemen and supporting the Houthis, and Saudi Arabia feeling a need to step in there because of the reversals they've had in Syria and other places where there's this sort of proxy war going on. But I don't think it becomes a strong sort of we're, allies with Iran at the expense of our traditional allies. I think it just becomes from a very, very hostile, closed relationship to a more practical and workable one. And obviously that has a lot of security benefits, both for the United States and I would argue the region as a whole.
Turad, you mentioned a little earlier that this would have quite a dramatic impact on the region itself. What Michael was saying there about the possible fallout from the US getting closer to Iran, how do you think this could aid or hinder relations in the region, particularly with Saudi Arabia now?
I think I looked at this issue from different perspectives. Actually, the leaders on the western side of the Arabian Gulf, Saudi Arabia and the GCC, and some other Arab countries, they look at it that the United States has its interests and they should seek its political interest anyway. However, Saudi Arabia is concerned, the Saudis, the Arabian Gulf countries, concerned because the action of the Iranian policies in the region is not positive, is not something that Iran should be rewarded for. This is the issue. If Iran, after this, or up to the 1st of July, come forward with a positive steps towards assuring its neighbors, because they are the gate for more prosperity for the people. Those cheers we have seen on the Iranian streets, it has one meaning. It stems from how desperate is the Iranian to have a better life. And this is one of the objectives of lifting the sanctions.
I just want to ask you something as well about the shift in relations. I mean, the fact that Barack Obama phoned your king before speaking to Netanyahu, what sort of message was that?
Well, actually, President Obama is holding his own strategy on the region, He mentioned that he will meet with the Israeli Prime Minister and also with the King Salman and the Gulf leaders in order to assure the support of the United States. Thank you very much, President Obama. However, the ball is in the Iranian court, because the deal signed or will be signed is with regard to the nuclear issue. However, the other supporting terrorism, intervening on the Arab issues, supporting those minorities and militias in different Arab countries is still remaining. And this is it concerns the Arab people. The only one who can turn this deal to a really historic action or historic deal is the Iranian that can move towards the positive side, not the negative side.
Okay, Zadig, I want to go back to the fact that Barack Obama phoned King Salman before he spoke to Netanyahu. I mean, Netanyahu says that Israel is now more at risk, and this deal could in fact threaten Israel. Should Israel be worried now?
To be honest with you, Jane, I think Netanyahu is using the Iranian nuclear program as an excuse to win support amongst Israelis. We know that Netanyahu's economic policy haven't been very shining, and of course Netanyahu is not the only one that is hiding behind Iran's nuclear program. There are others who are hiding behind the Iranian nuclear program, or rather using Iranian nuclear program as an excuse to develop their own policies. Now, with regard to what the colleague from Saudi Arabia is criticizing about Iran, I cannot understand when he says that that Iranian regime must work towards the betterment of Iranian people. Of course, this is true. We can say that about every country. As far as comparison between Iran and United States is concerned, Iran and Saudi Arabia is concerned, I agree that there are problems as far as human rights is concerned, as far as political development is concerned. But Iran is much ahead of Saudi Arabia, is much ahead of other Persian Gulf states as far as democracy, human rights, free election is concerned. When was the last time that we had any election in Saudi Arabia? When was the last time we had any election in other Persian Gulf states? So I think these are the points that if Americans are serious about democracy, if Americans are serious about human rights, then I think these are the issues that in future will crop up with nuclear issue getting out of the way. Then there are some hard questions that
I think that
U.S.
both countries
leaders
could
must answer
face
to American public opinion.
Turad, let me put this to you briefly. It seems we have seen a bit of a breakthrough here. I'm still trying to establish what sort of impact it's going to make on the regional. Will we see some sort of resolution when it comes to Yemen? Will we see some closer working together in places like Iraq and Syria, for example?
Well, I like this question. But first of all, we have to admit, or our friend in Iran, or Tehran, he has to admit that also Iran is taking the Israeli nuclear arsenal as an excuse to build their own. Well, so both Iran and Israel, both they are taking excuses. However, the democracy is a means; it's not an end by itself. If we would look to the normal person within the western side of the Arabian Gulf, we can see that much ahead and better off in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in everywhere, much better than the Iranian side. So democracy is a means. Number three, your question with regard to the future, what we are expecting. As I said, there is two ways. Iran cannot remain as the devil in the region. Why? Because they cannot afford three things. They cannot afford spending on the Iranian people. At the same time, they go into an arms race, and this is the security dilemma. Thirdly, they cannot support all the militia and uprising militia in the Arab countries. It will end up like the Soviet Union. They keep supporting all of those social parties and so forth till they collapse. They cannot compete with Saudi Arabia in arms race.
Okay, Sadiq, I'm going to jump in there because we are running out of time. I just want to put my final question to Michael Brooks. I mean, I'm just wondering, 10 years from now, what will be deemed a success in Iran? And if Iran cheats, what should the international community do?
If Iran cheats, as Kerry noted, the whole way the package is designed, sanctions will snap back into place. But I think success is really that it's a more normal relationship, and that all of these sort of debates that you're hearing right now on this program can become part of a broader and more normalized diplomatic process so that these conflicts and these disputes can be brought more into the open. Everybody's valid concerns and strategic imperatives can be addressed, and I think that would be a mark of success. We're not talking about the United States and Iran becoming best friends or the strategic order in the Middle East being completely upended, but it is a significant improvement, and there is a number of areas that if we can have an honest conversation with Iran, along with the Gulf, along with Israel, it will pay significant strategic and security dividends, which hopefully will benefit the well-being of everybody in the region.
A very big thank you to my three guests. All eyes on the June 30th deadline now. Sadiq Zibakalam in Tehran, Michael Brooks from New York, and Turad El-Amri from Jeddah. And thank you very much for joining us. If you have anything you'd like to add, go to our program page at aljazeera.com. You can post your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or send your tweets to @AJ Inside Story or @Jane Dutton. And I'm Jane Dutton from the whole team here. Bye for now.